for the sake of the 60 decibel team, I think would like to let you know what this forum is about. Majority of the people who are joining us today have been part and parcel of the e-community group, and they are aware of why we normally hold these sessions. So for the sake of your team, the e-community of practice is, sorry, I think I needed to admit someone and I rejected. Sorry about that. Yeah, so for the sake of your team, we welcome you to our monthly eCooking Community of Practice. So this Community of Practice is normally co-convened by Gamos East Africa, African Center for Technology Studies, Kenya Power, and CCAK, which is the Clean Cooking Association of Kenya. So we are supported under the MECS program. And so the reasons why we do this convening is basically to bring together our stakeholders within the clean cooking sector and the electricity access sector. So we do this via the WhatsApp group. We have our e-cooking community of practice WhatsApp group, and we also do the monthly dialogue series. And this is why we are having you here today, so that you share with us some of the findings from your recent study that you did on usage and impact of electric pressure cookers used by customers in Kenya. So we welcome you today to share with us the insights that you got from that study, and we hope that everyone will be able to learn a few things from that study and see which areas still need a lot of some work to be done. So Maria, please feel free to introduce your team. Thank you.
Perfect. Many thanks to Pros and everyone here. We're really excited to see everyone that is working also on the Modern Energy Cooking Services program. My name is Maria Campos. I'm a senior associate at 60 Decibels based on our London's office. And I was a project manager, internal project manager for this study and this report. And there's also Audrey from our office in Nairobi joining us here. Audrey, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, I'm Audrey and I'm a senior associate at the Nairobi 60 Decibels office, and I was working with Maria on the project. I'm very excited to hear the discussions today.
Thanks all. Perfect. So we have a presentation prepared to show with you. I think we want to spend some time discussing the results of this study, and then we will have time for questions. Also, if you have any questions throughout the presentation, I think it's fine if you can raise your hand or ask the question. We're more than happy to answer those. And I don't know if there's anything else to do before, any other introductions, or we can jump to the presentation.
Yes, I think we can proceed. For the rest of the participants, kindly introduce yourselves on the chat, and if you have any questions as they present, feel free to also post those on the chat. Thank you.
Perfect. Many thanks. Can you see my presentation, my screen? Or?
Yes, we can, Maria.
Perfect. Great. So back to you, Off.
Great. So the way we've planned this session is that we will take you through the methodology of the study, tell you exactly who we spoke to, and then some of the 6 key insights that came out of the study. Maria, just go on to the next. So we, in the most recent study that we'll be calling Follow-up 2, we spoke to 286 respondents between April and June of last year. And this group was selected from 463 EPC customer contact details from the different companies that you can see on the screen. So we had Sasa, we had Power Hive, we had Barn and Scored. And we were able to achieve a confidence level from that sample size of 95% and 4% margin of error. And what this means really is that, some of the insights from these studies will be applicable to the whole population. Next. Great. So I have mentioned that the most recent study is what we are calling follow-up 2. Between 2020 and 2023, 60 Decibels has actually conducted a number of interviews. So over 1,300 interviews with 700 customers of 5 electric pressure cooker companies. So the companies I previously mentioned. And what we did was that we talked to customers around 6 weeks since they purchased their electric pressure cookers. And so that was our baseline. And you can see the sample, there were 2 phases. There was a sample of 400 and 300. And then from there, we did a follow-up. So the first follow-up was done around 6 to 8 months, I believe, from when we did the baseline. So we tried to just select from the same cohort of customers. And then we did another follow-up, now follow-up 2, 12 to 36 months afterwards. So between 2020 and 2023, and you see that there's a smaller sample size with each of the consequent interviews, because obviously we're not able to reach every single respondent from the baseline. Next, Maria. So within this report, we have the analysis of the 286 customers, so the customers from the follow-up 2, and then we've provided a comparison for a smaller sample of customers, so that 121, and these customers are customers who completed both the baseline, follow-up 1 and follow-up 2. So if we were able to speak to customers in all of the 3 time points, we also provided a comparison, and I think it was just like, it's a direct comparison because we are able to talk about the 3 time points. Sorry, just a sec. Okay, great. So as I'd mentioned, we'll just be going through some of the 6 things that stood out to us about the impact of the electric pressure cookers as according to the customers who are using them. And the first one is that customers are wealthier than the Kenyan national average, but also most of them are accessing this type of product for the first time. So we'll just go fast and talk about the demographics. So a typical EPC customer is a 42-year-old female. They live in a rural area in a household of 4 members. Next, Maria. And I mentioned that we see that customers are wealthier than the Kenyan national average. And so how we calculate this is we use a poverty probability index. And so this is a set of questions that assesses customers, respondents, assets, and consumption behaviors. So we are able to then predict whether the household's likelihood of living above or below the poverty line. So in Kenya, as of last year, at least when this study was conducted, those who live below $3.20 line per day are considered to be living in poverty. So if you look at the middle part of our graph, we see that the EPC customers that we spoke with, we have 28% who are on this line, compared to the national population of 47%. So because of this, we see that we have an inclusivity ratio of 0.58. And so what this really means is that there's room for EPCs to reach more low-income households. So the inclusivity ratio goes, if it's above 1, it shows that you're overserving low-income household. So in our example here, if it was above, probably the different points was like 28 went beyond 47%, we'll be seeing that likely the inclusivity ratio will be higher, because then you're serving more people in that national poverty line. And then for if you see it's below 1, there's room to reach more low-income customers, and that's the case with our results, where we see that it's 0.58. And so also one of the things that we see is that the majority of these customers live in areas where there's like mini grid connection, which is I guess not as surprising, because at least that's the way they can access electricity, but it's definitely something that, you know, has influence, perhaps influences the uptake of EPC for customers. Next, Maria. So the great news here is that we see that customers are accessing a product like this company provides for the first time. So when we look at fast access, we're really trying to determine, is a company serving a population base that was previously underserved or unserved? And the fact that 92%, so it's like around 9 in 10 customers are saying that this is the first time they own an electric pressure cooker before the company purchase, it really shows like that company is contributing positively in reaching an underserved customer base. Great. I don't know whether there are any questions about the first section before we move on to the next. I think there's someone, Elsie, who has their hand raised. Yes, Elsie.
Thank you. I hope you can hear me.
Yes.
Yes, my name is Elsie Onsongo. I'm from Nuvoni Center for Innovation Research. We've been collaborating with MECS and other stakeholders to develop the electric cooking strategy for Kenya. And we also did a baseline study. So it's very interesting to see that your initial findings around the demographics are quite similar to what we found in our study last year. I just wanted to confirm something. I think in the previous slide, it says something like the degree that RBF participating companies in terms of inclusivity is only 0.58%. By RBF here, do you mean result-based financing schemes or something else?
Yes, results-based, because the project was based off of companies who participated in that. And so the sample that we took are, specifically for that RBF programming,
I just want to understand this number. Can we make an inference that then these RBF programs are not as inclusive as they should have been in terms of targeting the poor and low-income households, but instead targeting other population groups? Just clarify for me what that number means.
Yes, that's exactly it. Because as I'd mentioned, if the number was close to 1, we'll say that, this company, it's like the inclusivity is at parity with the national poverty line. And if it's below 1, it means like the companies are underserving low income households, and then above 1, they are overserving. So in our case, yes, there's definitely room to reach more low income household. And at the moment, we can say that, the customers are wealthier compared to the Kenya national poverty line. So,
right.
I mean, relative, everything is, so that is exactly right, Elsie.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, so one of the second things that came up from the results was that EPC customers are adopting the use of electricity for cooking. I mean, not so surprising with the introduction of EPC, but they still stacking that occurs. Thanks, Maria. So one of the things that we asked customers was about their sources of fuel for cooking before their EPC. And then we asked them, what is their source for cooking now? So after the EPC. And you can see again, which is something that might give you an idea about income inclusivity, because LPG also tends to be used by people who tend to be more higher income. But if you see, even from the baseline, we had almost 3 in 5 customers who are using LPG as their source of cooking fuel. And then we see a huge spike of electricity use. If you look at the electricity from like 3% in the baseline, and then it shoots up to 91% after the acquisition of EPC. So we can really see that, customers are adopting this, and hopefully like it's more, cost efficient way of cooking. And it's good news that, some of the more polluting sources of fuel are decreasing from the baseline to the follow-up 2. So if you see charcoal, it goes down from 55 to 39. Wood usage has also gone down. So this is great news generally in terms of moving customers to using cleaner, less polluting sources of fuel. Great. So again, we wanted to understand what is the cooking experience of customers. So we asked them, what's their primary source of fuel for cooking now. So previously we asked them about all sources of fuel that they use, but we wanted to know what is the primary. And we see that half of customers say that electricity is one of the primary source of cooking fuel now. And we still see that LPG is amongst the top sources of fuel. And then we wanted to understand too, like what the cooking proportion is done by the EPC. So beyond just owning it, we see that we have around 50%, half of them who say that, the EPC is used for the majority of their cooking. And so when you say majority, it's just really those who are using them 3/4 of the time or more. And so this is great that, the EPC is still gaining, he's still, not beyond just like having it, acquiring is still being used majorly in households. And then we wanted to understand, okay, what does this proportion, the last one, this proportion of cooking depend on? And so we see that type of meal, time are some of the things that influence customers' usage of the EPC. Yeah, so I'd mentioned that we see that, it's great that half the customers are using it majority of the time, but we wanted to also know the number of cook stoves that they're using in addition to their EPC. And this is where you really see like that stove stacking occurring. And we see that, 61% of customers who do not use the EPC for all of their household cooking have at least one cook stove. So we only ask this question to people who are not using it for 100% of the cooking. And then we asked them what exactly do they use this other cook stove for, and we found that a lot of them is like either they're cooking very specific meals, so it might be like the local like cereals, boiling and heating, or when they want to do simultaneous cooking, they will do that. Next video. Great. So we've moved from understanding the profile of customers to understanding their behavior around, EPCs, and now we're moving on to the impact. And we see that customers report improvements in quality of life, feelings of safety, and health since their adoption of EPC. So this question we just asked as how safe you feel in your home or business changed because of having the EPC, and we see that almost 9 in 10 customers say that it has indeed improved, and 3/4 of them report significant improvements in the sense of safety. And so again, there's also a correlation between people who are reporting significant improvements. So those who say very much improved sense of safety, with those who also, they're also more likely to say that their quality of life has improved. So this is definitely an aspect that is quite important to customers. Okay. And then in terms of impact on health, we also wanted to just understand. So in the baseline, we asked customers whether they've experienced any sort of health issues with regards to cooking. And we see that while majority had said no, they've not. We do have an important 24% who said that they have experienced some health issues with regard to the ways of cooking at that point in time. And then we, during the first and second follow-up, we asked about whether the health of their or their family has changed as a result of having the EPC. And we see there are improvements that are reported in both studies. And it's great to see some of the changes that they're talking about was that their respiratory function has improved. Cooking is cleaner, they have less headaches, and then relatably, less exposure to harmful gases, physical discomfort, and a lot of it was around respiratory issues being improved. So I'm just going to pause here and see whether there are any questions before we move on. Okay. I don't think there's any questions so far, Maria. So we can.
There are actually sorry. There are questions. However, we will prefer that we finish with the presentation because we have a Q&A session.
Okay, amazing.
Okay,
Great.
Okay, thank you.
So and another of our classic questions at 60 decibels to really gauge the depth of impact is understanding the quality of life changes that customers are experiencing as a result of having access to a product or service. So when we asked this EPC customers whether their quality of life has changed, we see that you know, half of them, like over half, have report significant changes. So we did put a comparison between follow-up 1, follow-up 2, and you're able to see that, you know, people, like generally customers are reporting improvement, but there is a good percentage who are reporting significant improvement. And there's just some quotes there on the side to really just show you, to bring this data to life. I'm just going to read out one of them that says, the ease of cooking with a pressure cooker enables me to cook very fast when I get home late and rest early, since it takes a short time to cook with the EPC. So there's really talking about time savings, and those are some of the things that we will see in the next slide. Great. So beyond just asking about whether quality of life has changed, we also try to ask customers to describe in their own words what exactly has improved or gotten worse or, you know, not changed. And we see that for those who said that their quality of life has improved, they talk about time savings. They also talk about the EPC being very cost effective. And so they've also seen improved savings, and also they just mentioned how convenient the EPC is to use for their cooking. And then we have the 3% of customers. So you see, as I see again, not the majority, but still a very important percent of customers who report no change or the worst quality of life. And they attribute this to high electricity consumption of the pressure cooker and the heavy repayment burden of their credit. I think, Maria, now it's
perfect. My time.
On to you.
Great, thank you. And I think, yeah, the next thing that stood out for us is like super connected to the quality of life answers that we receive. And as Odd mentioned, time and money were kind of the top drivers for customer satisfaction and impact. So we have seen that is having like people that are like commenting on this, on the quality of life question, but we also had some questions specifically to measure this. Perfect. So yeah, in this sense, time and money are the top drivers, and we also try to measure this with the specific questions throughout like the two studies. During the baseline study, sorry, I can do both things apparently. Perfect. So during the baseline study, respondents mentioned that they spend like 171 minutes on cooking each day on average. For the follow-up 1 study, that it was after the initial 6 months that they bought the electric pressure cooker, the average respondent mentioned that they were now spending on average 80 minutes on cooking. And during the follow-up 2 study, they mentioned 65. So here we can see that throughout like the different studies, the time that the respondents spend on cooking has been decreasing like consistently. And like the change from the baseline to the follow-up study, it is like pretty like solid, we will say. Then kind of we wanted to understand more about like the time savings and how or like what are these uses that the respondents were having now that they have like the extra time. One of the things that we notice is that these time savings are reflected on the time that they're spending taking care of children or elders with 9 in 10 mentioning that the time that they're spending doing these activities has increased. We also asked them about time, the time that they spend doing leisure activities. And we also see that almost, well, more than 9 in 10 have seen their time spent on leisure increase since they bought the electric pressure cooker for any of the companies. The other big impact, or one of the drivers that we saw, is that respondents are spending less on cooking fuel or energy to cook. So here we can see in this graph that during the baseline study, respondents mentioned that they were spending, we put everything on US dollars just to have a more clear sense, that they were spending 6.7 US dollars on cooking fuel or energy. So here we ask about any cooking fuel that you, or things that you are buying on a week to being able to cook. Then during follow-up 2, this number decreased from 6.7 to 4.4. And during the follow-up 2 study, we saw a slightly increase on this spending. So here we can also see that this decrease is kind of consistent. Of course, to analyze this data, and because the baseline, the follow-up 1 and the follow-up 2 took, we asked these questions on a different period of time with different inflation rates, with different, we try to normalize these numbers just to have a clear sense of, okay, what is the actual impact that that electric pressure cookers are having on the spending of the respondents. And finally here, we saw that this decrease, it represents, because we ask about a weekly spending, on a year saving, this can be more than 100 US dollars. So that is, and we saw this on the quality of life questions, on the impact question, that they are seeing this benefit, and they're also perceiving that impact on the savings as something that is improving their quality of life. Also, the next thing that stood out for us is that customers are satisfied with the EPC, and they rate them good value for money, but they are still reporting some challenges. So for us, it's really important, and we do this in 60 Decibel for most of our studies. We ask the customer satisfaction, I think this is kind of one of the most common ways to measure customer satisfaction, that is using the Net Promoter Score. So in the Net Promoter Score, for those of you that don't know this methodology, what we do is we ask a really simple question, that is, on a scale from 0 to 10, how likely are you to recommend the company of the electric pressure cooker to a friend or family member? When 0 is not likely at all, and 10 is extremely likely to recommend the company. So we ask this question to the respondent, and based on this, we calculate the percentage of promoters. Promoters is anyone that is saying that they will highly recommend, that is on the scale 9 and 10. Then we have passives, that are those respondents that mention 8 and 7, and then anything below 6 is considered a detractor. And to calculate the Net Promoter Score, what we do is we subtract the percentage of the percentage of detractors from the promoters, and this gives us a score. The normal, anything above 50 on the Net Promoter Score is a really good number. Anything between 0 and 50 is there's some room for improvement, of course, and anything below 0 is a negative Net Promoter Score. So here we ask the customers of these different companies, and the average in follow-up 1 was a 64 Net Promoter Score. In the follow-up 2, the average is 60. So these are really good numbers. Yeah, this is something to celebrate for the companies. And yeah, we saw that this small variation, that it can be related more with the use and the experience that they're having, probably more challenges once they have passed kind of this initial phase of learning from the how to use it, how to use the electric pressure cooker, if they're having like some issues, this can affect, of course, the net promoter score and the likelihood of someone to to recommend the brand. We also ask after the net promoter score to the promoters, to the passive and detractors, we ask them different questions to understand why they are promoters, passives, or like detractors. Like what are the things that are driving them to be promoters? To the passives is like, okay, what is their experience? And detractors is we ask them about the things that they want to see or the changes that they would like to see to be able to become promoters of the brand. So here we saw that promoters, what they love is the ability to save time. So time is something that people continue like mentioning. Energy efficiency of the cooker and the convenience of the cooker. And here we have one quote from a promoter that is telling that why they are like a promoter, and it's because it takes a short time to cook with the EPC. Once you set the timer, you don't need to constantly check it like you will do with charcoal or firewood. So this is one of this capture kind of the reasons of, kind of efficient, convenient, and even like saving time. Then we focus on the detractors. Here it represents like a 3%. So with the detractors, we ask them what they want to see to become promoters. And they mention energy efficiency of the cooker, increase the capacity of the cookers, and being able to have like a fast and efficient cooking. So here, one of the quotes that we pull out from the respondents is that they would like to increase the capacity of the electric pressure cooker to be able to cook large quantity of food. So this limitation is one of the drivers to not having the full experience and not being fully satisfied with the EPC. Then we also ask about the value for money. This is a question we normally do to try to understand if the value for the money that they are paying for the product or service, in this case, the electric pressure cooker, is very good, fair, poor, or very poor. So what we notice here is that the majority of the respondents, 9 out of 10, mentioned that the value for money for the electric pressure cooker was good, or like, is good. So the value for money is also closely linked with the NPS. So respondents were more likely to say that their value for money was good, were also or have a higher net promoter scores than respondents that mentioned that their value for money was very poor or very poor. And here we can see that 71, like the score for those that consider good value for money is 71, that is slightly above than the average or like the whole study. So value for money is one of those drivers also for satisfaction. Perfect. And then one of the things that is also affecting satisfaction are the challenges. Here, what we normally do in our studies in 60 decibels is that we ask customers if they have experienced a challenge with using their electric pressure cooker or their, the product. In this case, we can see that like close to 1 in 5 mentioned that they have had like a challenge with their electric pressure cooker. So, and of this like 16%, 60% during the follow-up and 72% during the follow-up mentioned that these challenges have not been resolved so far. So what we ask is, okay, have you experienced a challenge? And then the follow-up question is that if that challenge has been resolved by the company. And we can see here that that number is has increased from follow-up 1 to follow-up 2. What we recommend here is resolving challenges to the cost, like with the customers, is one of the things that can drive, like increase your promoters. And most of the time, those respondents that are living in this unresolved customers like world are the ones that are, of course, having like the not so satisfactory experience with the product. So it's really important to keep a close eye on these ones. Perfect. Great. And finally, yeah, what we wanted to do, and in this study, we have the comparison of the performance across 3 different points in time. The objective of the study was to do like a baseline, then a follow-up 1 and a follow-up 2. That is why this study was like a longitudinal study. As Odd mentioned at the beginning, we have like 3 groups. The baseline group, then the follow-up 1 and follow-up 2, that the cohort of respondents that participated in those 3 points of time was like 121. Then if we compare only the baseline and the follow-up to study, we have 286 respondents. So here in these slides, what we wanted to present is kind of the indicators throughout the time. So we divided this on profile, cooking, satisfaction, and impact. So for the profile, what we normally measure is the access to alternatives. Here, the percentage of respondents that don't have an access to a good alternative increased from 41 to 93%. So here we can say, and like a good alternative, sometimes at the beginning where you start using a product, a good alternative is, you don't know all the benefits of the product. So probably at the beginning is like, okay, probably I can have a good alternative. A good alternative can be like moving back to LPG. But throughout the time, like if customers understand other like benefits of the products, so that can be one of the reasons of why these good alternatives increase, because at the beginning it was probably like, okay, it's working, it's fine, but then throughout the time they start seeing more of the benefits. So finding a good alternative becomes more complicated for a customer throughout time. Then the cooking sources, or the impact on cooking. Here we measure the uses of different cooking sources, LPG and electricity. Here we saw, and this is what Odd presented at the beginning, the changes between what a respondent was using at the beginning, like on the baseline, the main source to cook, that it was mostly LPG. And now after the follow-up, what is the difference? So here, the big jump, of course, it was a percentage that used electricity as energy source for cooking. We jumped from 3% in the baseline to 91%, which is like a big jump, but it was also the objective, like moving people to start using electric pressure cookers. So it's aligned. And then the EPC usage, here what we wanted to measure was the percentage of cooking proportion. So here is about 75% of more of the cooking is done with the EPC. So here we saw that from follow-up 1 to follow-up 2, this number decreased. In cooking, and I know like you are more the experts on this, but like cooking, stacking like different cooking solutions is pretty common. So here is like, although people can be using the electric pressure cooker, they also rely on other like products, services, LPG. So yeah, that's why we have these changes. Then the cooking responsibility, we talk about, we didn't present this, but one of the questions on the study, and if you have seen the report, it is in there, is about the time that someone else is spending, like the time that the respondent is spending on cooking now, like prior and the current use, like the percentage of time that they were spending on that. Here we saw that this number maintains the same. So the responsibility of cooking probably like the person that is the responsible between like the baseline and the follow-up, we didn't saw like a big change. Although in the study and related to the electric pressure cookers, some mentioned that because they feel safer, they also rely more on other like members of the family to like, yeah, they cook because of the electric pressure cookers. They can be like safer. They are like easy to use. So that is one of the things that we wanted to measure here, although it remains pretty like consistent throughout like the life of the study. And the cooking responsibility, that is any other member contributing to cooking. And this is something that we normally want to measure to understand, yeah, if like the responsibility varies because of the different products, because it's easier. Why? Because they feel safer, because it's like the ease of use is more simple. So someone else can also support on the or contribute on this kind of cooking responsibility within a household. Perfect. And then the other indicators that we had were connected, well, are more about satisfaction and impact. On satisfaction, we mentioned quality of life here and across the companies. The quality of life of the respondents has improved, and this has remained steady from follow-up 1 to follow-up 2. So we can say that this impact is kind of consistent throughout time. Then the expenditure on cooking or electric fuel and time that I mentioned, that these are two of the biggest impacts, and the respondents are feeling that, like moving from spending almost $7 to $5 is something that the respondents notice, and that that is impacting their quality of life, as they mentioned, but also their satisfaction with the product. And the time, like this was one of the greatest impacts that we saw throughout the study, the time that someone is spending on cooking compared to the baseline, to the follow-up 1 and follow-up 2. And this trend of going from follow-up 1 to follow-up 2, in which it continues to decrease, which is like a good sign. And then one of the other impacts or indicators for satisfaction is that respondents mentioned that the family health has improved, in this case, very much improved. This is also increasing from 57 in the follow-up 1 to 60 in the follow-up 2. And finally, we talk also about ease of use, issues resolution, and more like the customer experience with the electric pressure cooker. Challenges, as we mentioned, it has remained the same, although the proportion of unresolved challenges has increased. And this number, it's important to track it, because at the end, challenges impact the overall satisfaction of the users. And then customer effort. This is a question that we normally ask to understand if you had like a challenge with the product, if the company made like easy to resolve that challenge. The customer effort here is also quite consistent, but it's one of the things that it's important to track, because it's from 1 to 5. If the customer effort is really high, is because to the respondents or the customers, they require to put a lot of effort in order to resolve their challenge. And of course, if any experience, like if you experience like with any like product, if you need to put like a lot of to fight to get your like challenge resolved, of course experience or your satisfaction is gonna decrease. And finally, the Net Promoter Score, which, as I mentioned, the 64 and 60 in the follow-up 2 are really good numbers. And this is a sign that the customers are satisfied with the electric pressure cookers companies. And the value for money, that, as we saw, is pretty connected also with the satisfaction. The percentage of customers that consider their value for money for their electric pressure cooker above like that is good, is almost above 90%. So it's also like a really good like metric to track and to understand if customers perceive this value of their product. Perfect. Great. So many thanks. I think we can have now a space for questions.
Yes, we can. So, hi everybody. My name is Lynn Gatia, and I will be taking you through the Q&A session. So far, I've noted at least 2 questions. One is from Perez Rocio, who is stating that even with RBF, the appliances are still too expensive. For most, that is requesting that you explain whether some are selling these appliances on credits. And this question was targeted to Audrey at the time you're actually presenting. So Audrey, please answer this question.
Resume the RBF was coupled with paygo to make it affordable. Sorry, can you say the question again?
I will read it as is. Even with RBF, the appliances are still too expensive for most. That is requesting that you explain whether some are selling these appliances on credit.
Yeah, so I think I believe I don't really remember if we got like the exact same. I don't know, Maria, whether we have that. We got the data with details, but I believe it was a mix of both where they had some customers paying upfront and then had some customers paying in installments. And that I'm not necessarily sure about what percentage of customers did that and for what companies, unless I have to like go back to like the baseline data and look that up.
Thank you. Perez, I hope your question has been answered. Perez, are you satisfied?
No, not really. I think you guys should be more careful with this, the PPI and the inclusivity ratio, which is one of the things that really investors care about, right? Are we really serving the people that need these appliances? The answer is no, right? And as you know, in the cooking sector, making these appliances affordable we have several mechanisms. One of them is a credit element. So I do know, I mean, I'm Bida Sasa, therefore I know that we did sell these products on credit. And Skode, who is also in the audience, they also have a layaway system whereby people save and then they get the appliance. So at least 2 out of 4 of the participants confirm that have sold these appliances on credit. Therefore, there is the RBF, right? This is a second mechanism that makes these appliances a bit more affordable. And the third one that we have not mentioned is carbon, right? Carbon finance is another way of making these appliances a bit cheaper or more affordable. So, and I think those 3 things need to be taken into account when we are looking at the PPI, because that's the whole goal, right? Is the PPI going to be more inclusive as we increase subsidies in all formats or shape? That's really the end goal. So yeah, I think you guys, when you do the, how do you say, profile of the different business models that you are looking at, you really need to ask those questions to the participants, right? Are you using RBF? Are you using credit? Are you using carbon finance? Those are the 3 things I would ask, and I will make a big difference between the 3, right? Because it does have a big impact on the customer profile, I think. Yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you so much for that feedback. I think it's definitely something we'll take into consideration as we're moving forward with our studies. Yeah, but I think one of the things with PPI is that at least it does not necessarily say that the companies are not serving low-income households at all. I think it's just more like relatively to the national poverty line. That's why we said there's more room to just reach more lower income customers, and I hope that can also be interpreted from our results. It's not that there's no household being reached at all. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and I also consider is really interesting, and we have seen this kind of request increasing for studies, Rocio, on understanding the use of different kinds of financing and subsidies for this type of products. So I think there is also an interest on the sector, and yeah, as 60 decibels, we have had like a few, but there is like a lot of things that we would love to learn from these new approaches, and that are also really important to start investigating more like carefully and more in detail, because the impact can be like impressive. So yeah.
It's just I don't even know if there's any investor in the audience today, for example, right? And I talk to investors all the time. They don't know what EPCs are. They have no clue, right? This is a brand new product that is perceived as a aspirational, middle class, a high class, Nairobian, urbanite, lady of leisure kind of thing. And I have to demystify all of this. And I said, no. This could be used by anyone. Oh, how come? right? And then, you know, your metric of inclusivity is not very good, right? Of course, it's not very good because we just barely started, right? I don't know what is the whole sample of your study. I don't know how many EPCs, but you are talking about 100 people here, right? So yeah, your samples are 100 here, 100 there. That's not representative of potentially millions of customers, right? So I think that's one of the problems I have, is that if investors are not even listening, and if they listen and they see, oh, this is a posh thing, right? This is a luxury item. It's not for me because I'm an impact investor. We need to be a bit careful, right? And that's why you have to say, yes, the impact that we see is not very inclusive, right? This PPI is not super compared to other cooking appliances, and I speak by experience. However, right, there are ways to make these appliances more affordable and more inclusive if we work together and if we did all these following things, right? And if you have some data, then so even better, right? That's all really. I think we're all in agreement, but there's a lot of work to do still.
No,
Okay.
definitely. And yeah, I think for us, it's really important to put like the results into the context and how we explain, and how also like methodologies, of course, like they're not all perfect, but putting like the correct information, and also, yeah, that is like a really important part, I think, with the EPCs, understanding that this is a new product that is starting in the market, and growing in the market. Probably if you compare it to other solutions, and you can jump to like even solar lanterns, solar home systems, like at the beginning, probably the numbers were also kind of not super inclusive because the cost of the technology was different. But yeah, I think thanks for the feedback, Rocio, and yeah, we look forward to work more with Asasa and Escoria and all the companies.
Okay, thank you so much, Maria and Rocio. There's also another question from Duncan Mwangi. He's asked, has their social wellness improved from using EPCs? Considering pressure cookers do not need to be monitored all the time. The question was addressed to Maria, was asked to Maria at the time you were presenting.
Perfect. Yes, thanks. I think, yeah, the social wellness can be our way to measure quality of life, just to confirm. Or social wellness as a different concept.
Duncan will have to explain further because that's exactly how he asked it.
Perfect.
Yes.
Yeah, in terms of the quality of life, that is a metric that we normally, like one of our core metrics in 60 decibels. What we ask the respondents is, and the exact question is, has your quality of life changed because of the company, in this case, electric pressure cooker? So using that question, we give them like 5 options. That is, yes, very much improved, slightly improved, no change, got slightly worse, or got much worse. So we ask this question, and then we ask a follow-up question on if they mention that their quality of life has improved. We ask them like, can you explain how your quality of life has improved? If they don't perceive any change, we ask them why they don't perceive like any change. And if their quality of life has got worse, we ask them to explain that. Then, with all the answers, what we do internally is we codify the open-ended questions to understand the different like tax labels of these. And in the case of this study, and for all the companies that participated in this study, we saw that the quality of life improved, like improve in general, to 90, yeah, more than 90% of the respondents mentioned that their quality of life improved. So, and one of the things that they mentioned on why it improved, it was related to time. Let me just open all the... Yeah, what they mentioned is that their quality of life improve because of different things. For the ones that they mentioned that improve, sorry, apologies, I'm finding the results. Yeah, they mentioned that the ability to save time, talk about cost effectiveness, and also talk about the convenience. In ability to save time, it was this idea of, yeah, saving time because I don't need to monitor this because it's faster to, can be, I can cook faster. In the cost effectiveness and improve savings, it was because using the gas cooker, it was more expensive, or using other solutions was more expensive. And the convenience, some of the things that we notice is that, yeah, it was easier for the respondents or the customers to cook. That is also, like, it was easier for them than going and buying something that refilling the LPG, like cylinders, or even kind of the convenience of, yeah, sometimes if you're cooking with wood, it requires more time, you need to be more aware. So yeah, I think those were kind of the three things that they mentioned the most. I hope this answers the question.
Thank you. Duncan, I hope this answers your question.
Yes, Maria, that was clear. I just wanted to know if you know, the EPCs are cementing relationships, also nurturing the same, because that way we feel we are impacting positively as well. I think in future is always good to look at that aspect as well. Thank you.
Okay. I'm so sorry. I'll have to take you guys a bit back because I've just realized as you're answering a question, it's like there are other follow-up questions. So I'll take you back to the question on RBF, whereby Elsie Onsongo goes ahead and asks, understanding the inclusivity index from the RBF retailers perspective could help demystify that number further. Is this a case of mission drift? That is, since poorer customers can't purchase even at the subsidized price, retailers are forced to sell to willing wealthier buyers. And then John Leary goes ahead and says, speaking to Roche's point, did you do an analysis within this sample to compare metrics such as inclusivity between companies? For example, I will imagine that a company like Vidasasa, who primarily sell to rural women on credit, will score very differently on this metric than a conventional appliance retailer such as Hotpoint or Ramtons, who primarily make cash sales to high-income urban houses. And then Elsie goes, sorry, this is still John. Yes, exactly. It will be great to know whose delivery model was most effective in reaching lower income households, and by extension, whose product, training, and after-sale service enabled their customers to save the most money. I don't know if I'm clear. Maria, were you able to understand all of that? Audrey?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, one of you can take it away.
Yeah. Thank you so much for the question. So we were not able to do company level PPI analysis or poverty probability index analysis, just because there is a sample size that you need for us to be able to talk about whether a company is reaching a certain population. So if we have a sample size of below 100, we're not able to conduct PPI analysis. And given that we were working with sample sizes from different companies, and then collectively, I think we had 200 and, I don't know for the question itself, we had 248 respondents who answered the full set of questions. So again, it's a set of questions, 6 questions in Kenya, and collectively we're able to use the average of like each household's probability of living below that poverty, national poverty line, to determine then collectively how does the company compare to the Kenya national. So no, we do not have company segregated disaggregated data, but that is something definitely will be great to see. I mean, we've worked with all of these different companies, and we definitely usually see different inclusivity ratios when we are speaking specifically to the customers.
Okay, thank you so much, Audrey. Elsie and John Leary, are you satisfied with this answer? Elsie, John?
Eileen, I would say I'm satisfied. Okay, I'm satisfied for now. I think this is the drawback of quantitative studies that ought to push the boundary a little bit and ask a few more questions, follow-up questions to try and understand the metrics. Because as Rocio was saying, sometimes that metric can be completely misinterpreted and then it doesn't serve the purpose of the study. So indeed, maybe this is to kind of push back to you guys to say, okay, there's a need to contextualize these findings a bit more so that they make sense to policymakers and investors who then are going to be making important decisions based on these kinds of findings. So it's a challenge to you to kind of push the boundary a little bit.
Absolutely. Elsie, I think and that's why we typically have results call and we get from companies some of the context that we're missing. Like, yes, we have the data, but contextualizing it will be like really helps understand the results better. And we're definitely going to take that feedback. And then in terms, I think maybe I just could explain, Maria, sorry, I could just explain a little bit more about the income inclusivity and how that comes about. So we are not really the ones who came up with that methodology. So we have International Poverty Action, IPA. They're the ones who work on coming up with poverty probability index for different countries. So if you just maybe we can I can send the link of what the PPI is. And so because it's very hard to determine someone's income by just directly asking how much do you earn, other than the fact that it's a sensitive question, not many people will probably answer. Also, the variation of income month to month, year to year, it's very hard. So we usually use asset-based or consumption-based questions. So if you look at Kenya, for example, I think we usually ask questions. The questions are around whether the household has consumed milk, bread, I think banana, I don't remember others off the top of my head. So each different country has different sets of questions. And then because it is based around assets, which is much harder to like change from point to point, it's like either you own something or you're eating or drinking a certain thing that we're able to say, okay, it's likely that they live or above that $3.2 line. I think right now it's 3.65 for Kenya. World Bank has raised that poverty line. And so from there, we're able to calculate that income inclusivity ratio. And so these lines, the poverty lines, we're also not the ones who come up with it. It's usually we use what the World Bank has stipulated, and then we use IPA for the poverty to have that set of questions. And the set of questions do not really change. I don't think I've seen like year on, but what I understand is that they usually gather data from different sources nationally for them to be able to come up with a set of questions. So if helpful, we'll send a quick link so that you're able to read more about the PPI and how that comes about and then how we use it in our work. Yeah. Thank you so much, Elsie.
Thank you so much, Audrey. Liri, are you satisfied? I can see your hand is up.
Well, I just wanted to respond to Elsie's point in particular and mention that we are just starting work now on the next NDEV-funded RBF, which will roll out this year and will feature both electric pressure cookers and induction stoves. So taking that point kind of in mind, then I think we will look to design the data collection exercise around that, which at the moment is primarily around exploring the impact of discounted electricity pricing, to be able to do some of this comparison between companies as well as between appliances this time. So we do have a new platform which is just about to start and will hopefully get us the types of numbers that we would need to be able to disaggregate by companies, so that we can really start to get, for example, Rocio, the data that she needs to show to investors that her business model is able to meet a different clientele's needs than the conventional appliance retailers.
Okay, thank you so much, John. So allow me to go to the next question by Engineer Efantas. He had his hand raised and it's like I took a bit too long. So let me read his question first. Did the sample space included those in off-grid areas who use solar mini-grids, diesel mini-grid, and diesel/solar mini-grid? Okay, I don't know if that's a question or a statement. Did the sample space included those in? Engineer Efantas, are you here?
I'm here.
Please ask your question. I'm afraid I'm not able to ask it in the right way.
Okay, yeah. I just wanted to know, okay, me, I'm from Lelekad. We are in charge of promoting renewable energy and the grid power across the country. And we are really interested to know whether people are using e-cooking, even in off-grid areas, because we have a lot of power there and we have been having a challenge of low load. People are not using power in a productive manner. So I just wanted to know whether you did some of those areas. Hello? Can you hear me?
Yeah. Perfect.
So I just wanted to know, in this study, did you capture any data from those areas? Because we do have diesel stations, we have mini solar and also hybrid systems. Those are electrical power. We expect them also to be cooking using the e-cooker. So I just wanted to have a feeling whether, even if you did not do it, maybe the next time you can do that so that we can promote use of electricity for cooking in this off-grid area where there's no grid. There's no Kenya Power there, but the mini grids are managed by Kenya Power, but they are free from the main grid. That's my question. Am I clear?
Yes. Perfect. Yeah, thanks for the question. And yes, we asked the customers and the respondents of this study what they're using for lighting or energy at their houses. Right now, 88% are connected to the grid. So the remaining 12% is not connected to the grid. And of those that are not connected to the grid, they mention that they are using mini grids, solar home systems. So I think what we can say is this question was about like what they are using for light. I think we didn't cross it with the EPC, but I'm assuming if you have a mini grid or a solar home system, that is mini grid 4% of the respondents and solar home system 9% of the respondents, that is close to that 12% that is not connected to the grid. So we can say that, yes, we have in this sample respondents without grid connectivity that are using EPC at home.
That's great. Although you need to improve it to better, higher percentage. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think
Sorry,
perhaps
can I interfere with that?
Yeah.
The solar home system, an CoP solar home system does not support an EPC.
No.
Okay, fine.
Yeah. It depends, I think, on the consumption. But
okay, yeah. Mini grids fine, but standard solar home systems and EPCs are not compatible. Just to make sure that we are in agreement. Okay, bye.
Yeah, no. We don't have the data on the solar home systems, the capacity. They also mentioned like generators. We know that mini grids generators, most of those. Solar home system, it needs to be like a really big system that a normal kind of the most standard ones, like solar home systems of like a 50 watts solar panel is not going to support the EPC. But having that understanding, yeah, I think we also don't have like the size of these solar home systems, but there's a possibility that they are using it also for EPCs.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry. Oh, just one thing to add there that perhaps for me was interesting was that even though 88% of customers were connected to the grid electricity, like Maria mentioned, only 3% of them were using electricity as a source of fuel before having the EPC. So EPC is driving electric use in both people connected to the grid and those not connected. And I think that is there's still a huge opportunity to reach people who are already on the grid and do not really use electricity because they assume it's expensive. They already have these perceptions about electricity as a fuel source. So yeah, I can see that as a great opportunity too.
Thank you so much, Audrey and Maria. Let me move to the next question by Awar Otieno. She asks, was there a question on what customers are willing to pay for an EPC? I don't think there was a question on that. Therefore, the question is, on what customers are willing to pay for it? Did customers say what they're willing to pay for an EPC, an estimate or something?
No, we don't ask that question, and we normally don't ask that question in our studies.
It's okay. Thank you so much. Dorothy, are you comfortable with that answer? Awar, are you in this
discussion right now?
Yes, I'm okay.
Okay, you're okay?
Thank you.
Okay,
Yes.
you're welcome. So let's go to the next question by, I do not know how to say that name. I'm going to say Francois Lepicard. Do the results differ significantly in the subset of baseline LPG users? Audrey? Are you okay with that question?
Yes, we just do not have the answer to that like right off. It's not an analysis that we performed with this results. And it's something we can look at, but I don't have an answer right now.
Okay, it's okay. Thank you so much. I hope Lepicard, you're okay with that answer. Are you in the Okay, thank you so much. So I'll go to the next question by Anastasia. Would you be in a position to mention a few examples of the unresolved issues or the challenges they were facing as regards to ease of use? Maria?
Yes, perfect. Yeah, for the customer challenges, what we normally do, or we have normally 4 buckets of challenges that people tend to mention. One is technical fault. There is something wrong with the product. The other one is a mismatch expectations. So the customer says the product service is not working because they expected it to work on a different way. I think, or like different to what is actually intended to do. Misuse, the customer isn't using the product properly. So often, if you're not using it properly, you're gonna have like a challenge with that. This is sometimes related to lack of awareness or training. And then we have other challenges that are kind of external factors. Sometimes these factors are kind of out of the control of the companies. So the customers are affected, but there's no much that the company can do to solve these ones. For this specific study, the challenges that respondents mentioned, and if you remember, it was like only 16% of the respondents mentioned that they have had a challenge with their EPC. So this is like for the benchmarks of 60 decibels, like in general, this is aligned with the clean cooking kind of data. The 16%, I think it's even like less for the cooking. Our data right now is at 25%. That is a benchmark for the clean cooking. For EPCs is 16% of the customers, and they mention poor quality and durability of the cookers. So one of the quotes we have here is that the inside coating of the cooking pot is peeling off, and I don't know how to replace it. Then we have 34% mention the performance and function, that they were having issues with the performance and functionality. So one of the quotes here is, the wiring is loose, and since I reported, they have never come to fix the EPC. And 25% mentioned the timer or regulator issues. So problems with like the timer buttons, one of them, or the regulator of the system. So they mentioned the timer button is spoiled, and I have to use a knife to set the time. I have not yet got a response from the company. So those are kind of the challenges that we saw. For unresolved challenges, we can have that data, but we don't have it here.
Okay.
Unresolved, yeah. So unresolved was like from the 16%, 70 mentioned that they have unresolved challenges. 72.
Okay. Okay, thank you so much. Anastasia, are you comfortable with that answer? Are you satisfied?
Yes, I am. Thank you. Thank you very much, Maria.
Okay. Okay, you're welcome. So the next question is by Simon Bachelor. I hope the name is Bachelor. Why did you go for 75% rather than 50%? In brackets, SDG 7 definition, primary 50%. I think he's talking about the fuel, percentage of fuel used by households. Therefore, I will allow you, Maria, to answer that question.
To be honest, we normally use it, but it's great to see that the SDGs have this like number well defined. So I think that is something that we can discuss internally in 60dB and add it, and try to make it more aligned with the overall framework of the SDGs. So many thanks for pointing that out.
Okay, thank you so much. Simon, are you satisfied with that answer? Liri, I can see you also followed up on the same question. Are you satisfied with that answer? Dr. John, Liri?
Yeah, it sounds good to me. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. So on the chat box, those are the only questions that I've received. I will ask the audience. If you have any question right now, you can raise your hand and I will pick you one by one. Okay, Elsie, I can see you raised your hands. Go ahead.
No, I just posted a question while you were kind of wrapping up. Building on the question that Simon had asked and John had asked. Anyway, what did I say? That I think from the comparison that you are doing at the end, which was very interesting across the different waves of the study, first of all, I think the whole study shows that there's a preference for EPC and it gives really good substantiates why there's that preference, and it's good to have that data in that way. And over time, I think we've seen, if we're using this 75% metric, which I think is in question, that there's a decrease in, I think maybe you could, if you could throw up that slide, that the proportion of cooking goes down from 50% to 34%, something like that. I think if we're only talking about primary EPC cooking, which was interesting. I think we would expect that if households are so satisfied and, you know, there's convenience and all the time savings and health impacts, etc., that they would be cooking more with the EPC. So I don't know whether you have an explanation for why we see this kind of downward trend. For me, it was interesting to see that there was an upward trend for LPG, just based again on that table. I hope I'm not misinterpreting anything. And in that context, again, we know cost is a big factor when it comes to the choice to cook with electricity. And I think you addressed this looking at the weekly cost of cooking. And if I remember correctly, again, it seems the price is relatively stable, or the cost of cooking is relatively stable across the three tranches or waves of the study. Correct me if I'm wrong again. So I'm trying to understand then why is the preference as interpreted by the proportion of cooking with EPC going down if the cost is remaining relatively stable and there are all these other factors that are showing households prefer to cook with electricity with the EPC. And to complicate it further, I think we know that the cost of electricity has been going up, and at least there's a perception also beyond just that the cost of electricity is high. So I also wanted to understand that number, those weekly expenditures on EPC cooking, whether they are connected to the frequency of cooking. Like, are we able to understand what those numbers mean again? Because if households are cooking less with electricity, but the cost or the price remains stable, how do we interpret that? Yeah, sorry, this is a kind of a compounded question, but yeah, thanks.
No, thank you. I think on the first part about the cooking proportion, we have a question about the reasons. So that is something really interesting when we talk about like different cooking products and solution. That type of meal is something that affects kind of the decision making on which of your products are you going to use or services. So here we have that for those, and I think this is like what's presented by Odd at the beginning, like for those that are not using the EPC 100% of the time, why are the reasons of like, what does this proportion of cooking depend on? And here 55%, so more than half of the respondents mentioned that the type of meal is affecting the choice of which of the products are you gonna be using. So if it's electricity, so if it's LPG, or if you're using, if it's EPC, or if you're using LPG, wood, charcoal, or other. So there is a part of like behavior that I think affects the proportion, although Other factors like the bills of electricity can also affect. They mentioned 70% mentioned the availability of fuel. So that is one of the things that make people like choose between one of the other like products or services to cook. So that is one thing that can help us to understand why people use one or other, or instead of being using EPC for all their cooking, why they choose other options to cook too. I don't know if that answers that section, or Odd, if you want to add anything.
Elsie.
I think it's Audrey who's being asked maybe if she has.
I don't no.
Oh.
Odd, if you want to add anything, but Elsie, if that helps to understand this.
Yeah,
it helps to understand one part. Oh, sorry, Audrey.
Sorry, so Elsie, tell me the part that perhaps has not been fully.
Is your laptop is just talking? I can't hear. I don't know if mine is hanging or.
I think Audrey is asking if there's a part of the question that I don't understand. Why the frequency, what's the terminology used? I think the cooking proportion goes down over time. Did you get kind of a rationale for an explanation as to why that's the case across the different waves? It's a slight, okay, not very slight, from 50% to 34%. I think that was it.
From follow-up, yeah, I think I remember the cooking proportion. Yes, so at the beginning, during the follow-up one, only if we consider the follow-up one, we have like 12% mentioned that they were using the EPC 100% of the time, and then during follow-up two, only 2%. So we have 10% that moved from using it 100% of the time to use it below 100%, so 75, 50, or 25. We actually don't have a follow-up question about this, like an open-ended question. That's the reason why we ask about the cooking proportion reasons in follow-up 2. I don't have the results here, and I'm not sure if we asked this question during follow-up 1 to understand, to see if the cooking proportion reasons are different. But happy to check that, Elsie, and see if we have a data point here that is useful. I think here is more like assumptions, and this is not based on any data, but probably if you have like something that is new, you are using it more often, but now that you are, kind of new things, probably use them more. But I think that is only an assumption that, is based on my experience, personal experience. So we don't have like a, like data to back this statement. But happy to check the information to see if we have anything to share.
Thank you so much.
Lynn, maybe I can just, maybe from our experience, because we also noted that from time to from the use, it goes down after some time. And what Maria has said, one of the things is about the novelty has already gone down. A new thing, they are eager to test, so they cook a little bit more with it. And they also over time, they also settle down on what foods they would prefer to cook with an EPC, and not based on the taste or the experience, whether it was undercooked or overcooked. So they over time they settle down on the meals that they can cook with an EPC. There's also an aspect of housewarming that also comes into play from time to time. Once they are done, or the excitement has gone down with cooking with the EPC, then there's still this other need of housewarming. So they also go back to some of these other fuels that can also do that. And some other aspects have also been on reliability of the grid for some time, and also in relation to the cost of electricity and who actually pays for these bills. Because within the first few months, maybe if for example, it's the wife paying for some of these bills, over time, majority of the bills are paid by the men. So they feel that the bill has already gone up. So they discourage the use of the EPC for over time. So I think those are some of the things that you have picked from here and there in our experiences. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Anastasia. Let me pick Liri. I can see your hand is up also.
Thanks, and yeah, I just wanted to kind of build upon the points that had already been made. I think Maria is totally right that kind of honeymoon period when you get a new appliance does mean that for many people they tend to use it more at the beginning and that usage tails off over time. But I think the other big factor that happened in between those two surveys was around the relative price points of electricity and LPG. So around the time the first survey was done, then LPG was relatively expensive due to the supply chain issues, war in Ukraine, COVID, etc., and the reintroduction of VAT. And then electricity was relatively cheap. And if you look at the data from a year later, then those two things reversed. Electricity prices had increased quite substantially, and the high level political support for LPG meant that the price for LPG had decreased. So they'd essentially reversed in between those two surveys. So I think that could also explain part of the reason for the decrease in EPC use, especially as a primary fuel, or over 75%, because I think whilst boiling your cereals, etc., with an EPC is going to be cheaper than most other fuels, no matter what the relative price points are, because it's so much more efficient. Things like frying your sukuma wiki or say boiling rice, etc., will be affected by those relatively small but ultimately quite influential changes in the prices of the other fuels.
Yeah, I think that is the context that we love to hear from. Yeah, like the actual companies and people working on this. So many thanks. Great. I think we can share, well, the report that we share with MECS is available online. Also, taking advantage of this, we released a month ago, our Why Off-Grid Energy Matters report from 60 Decibels that includes the interviews for more than 79,000 off-grid energy customers. One of the big parts is the clean cooking section. So I can also drop the link here. And I think it's good to understand like the sector of clean cooking and also see the results of the EPCs and yeah, try to also see some of the comparisons. So yeah, happy to put here kind of the links. Yeah, I think MECS is there. And this is our report on why off-grid energy matters. And well, I think you have our emails. Thank you for inviting us. It was for us, I think it was a great way to continue learning about these novel kind of technologies that are in the market. Thanks. Yeah.
So thank you so much, Maria and Audrey, for a great presentation. I'm so sorry, at some point I wasn't able to hear what was going on in the end, but I wanted to say thank you for this lovely presentation. I also wanted to thank everybody in the audience for coming to this discussion on the usage and impact of electric pressure cookers used by customers in Kenya. Thank you all. I hope you are all satisfied. If anybody has a question, you can still raise it before I close the meeting. Are we all good? Okay, so I think we are all good. Thank you so much all and have a lovely evening.
Likewise.
Bye.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all for joining.
Thank you and bye-bye.
Bye.